I met my wife in May of 2017, so I've known her about 7 years in total, and she will still argue with me that my eyes are blue. Look at my eyes. Look at my shirt. Look at the eye of the jig head. Comment below if my eyes are green or if they're green. In today's video, we're going to be tying an easy two-tone crappie jig. I'm calling today's pattern Krystal Eggplant. We have this beautiful zombie pattern jig head from Ramble Tamble Tackle, and it's a glittery purple with some emerald or jade eyes on it. And I've picked up some really cool materials that are a perfect color match to this jig head. Now we're going to be tying with some Danville 210 denier flat wax nylon thread, and we're going to start here at the jig head and tie a base layer of thread down the shank until we get to the point of the hook. Next, we're going to tie in our tail, and it's going to be this Kelly green marabou feather. To prepare our tail, we just want to take our fingers and run them along that marabou feather until we get to the tip. And I'm going to tie in a tail that is close to the same length as our hook. So now I'm just going to do one loose wrap to secure that marabou feather to the top of the shank, right where we stopped our thread. Then we're going to start making some tighter wraps, working up the shank up toward that jig head. The feather can tend to get in your way, just kind of push it out of the way and continue with those wraps. After about 10 good wraps, that tail is nice and secure, and I'm sick of this feather being in my way, so now I'm going to twist it up, and I'm going to cut that so that it will end close to that jig head, about right there. And I'll just be making sure that I trap those marabou feathers to the best of my ability as I work up to that jig head. Now I'll just use my fingers to kind of pull back those protruding marabou fibers, and as I work back to the tail, I'll just secure those as best I can. And we're not worried about these little fuzzies up front. We're going to be covering those up with some chenille, not a problem at all. Okay, next we're going to tie a couple strands of flash into the tail. And these are clear strands, but they have a purple iridescent flash to them, and that's going to help our tail really match up to the rest of our materials and our jig head. Now I'm just going to turn everything sideways so you guys can see better what I'm doing here. We're going to take our first strand of flash, and we are just going to fold that over our thread. Then we're just going to slide that flash down our thread and position it right on the side of that hook shank. Then we're going to make just a few wraps down to the tail just to hold that flash in place. Once that flash is secured, I'm going to trim that right past the tips of the marabou feathers. So there's our flash on the first side, and now we're just going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. And there's our flash on the opposite side. Next, I'm going to tie in a piece of this medium crystal flash chenille in pearl color. And this is going to be the belly color of our jig pattern, so we want to tie that to the hook shank opposite of the hook point. So right here you can see I've removed the fibers from about 1/2 inch of that piece of chenille. And using one loose wrap, I'm just going to capture the end of that chenille to the hook shank. And then I'm going to wrap back on that until I reach the tail. After that, I'm just going to bring my thread back about 1/2 inch up the hook shank, and I'm just going to leave that piece of pearl chenille alone to the side. Next, I'm going to tie in a piece of this medium crystal flash chenille in purple color. And you'll see here that the purple color actually has a green flash to it, which is going to match it perfectly to that jig head. So now we're going to tie in this piece exactly the same way that we did with the pearl. After securing this piece of chenille, we're going to wrap that back tightly all the way to the head. Now I'm going to get my bobbin out of the way using my bobbin holder here, just hanging it over it like that, and get that out of the way. And now we're going to make tight wraps with the purple chenille all the way up to the jig head. And I'm going to do this with the rotary function of my vise, but if you don't have a rotary vise, you can just do it manually. So we're just going to apply some tension and start to rotate that jig around, making sure that we take our time and make our wraps close together so we can really build up that body with the chenille. Once we reach the jig head, I'm just going to reel some of that thread back into my bobbin. And then I'm going to wrap that thread around our piece of chenille 2 times, just to secure that. Then I'm going to perform a couple of wraps in front of the chenille, and then I'll go behind it another 2 times. And then in front one more time. And then we'll go ahead and snip that piece of chenille really close to that jig head. Now I'm going to flip this over. Now we're going to take our piece of pearl chenille and we're going to lay that right across the top here, and we're going to tie in our belly. So with my bobbin, I'm going to go ahead and secure that down. With one loose wrap, we can still maneuver this chenille just to make sure we get our belly perfectly aligned with the bottom. Then I'm going to make a couple more tight wraps. Then I'm going to make a couple tight wraps in front of the chenille. Then we're going to wrap behind one more time, in front 2 more times. And now I'm going to trim that piece of chenille as close as possible to that jig head. Now I'm going to use my whip finisher tool to perform a 5-turn whip finish. And now we can go ahead and cut our thread as close as possible to that hook shank. And there we have it, guys, the Krystal Eggplant Crappie Jig. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to watch my video, and I hope you did find some value in it. I'm going to be putting out a video for a very similar pattern called the Krystal Pumpkin, but we are going to be using a very different and more advanced technique for creating that 2-tone body. If you did enjoy the video, hit the like button for me. It helps the channel grow, and we're closing in on 3,000 subscribers. So if you did enjoy the content and want to see more like it, hit the subscribe button. And I will see you guys in the next video. My eyes are green.